mangled condition, the rope hoisted over a rafter beam and cutting into his neck. She shuddered and fixed her eyes on Calvin, who still hugged the dead man's legs. "It's too late." Her words echoed through the wooden structure. "Calvin, let him go." The boy, rather the man Libby had long called her best friend, gave her a lengthy, searching stare. The kind he so often did when assessing how serious she was, the truth behind her statement, and how to decipher her intent. Libby despised how the town of Gossamer Grove had labeled Calvin as a simpleton. He was more empathetic and intuitive than other adults who were considered functional. She cursed Calvin's critics many a time in the secret places of her mind. But now she grieved that Calvin could not process the difference between a man fighting for his life and a man whose face was gray and swollen in suffocated death. "Calvin!" Libby's voice was sharp but not stern. Panic made her hands tremble, and it welled inside her until her own throat tightened, as if asphyxiating by sheer empathy for the very stiff, very dead Deacon Greenwood. "We need to get help." Libby pointed toward the house just across the circular drive, its yellow siding cheery in the dawn. "But you said he's dead." Calvin had released the deacon and now frowned at her. "Yes, but—" Libby couldn't help but wave her hands, flustered. It wasn't supposed to have actually happened. The obituary in her pocket, the one foretelling Deacon Greenwood's death like some horrid omen, she'd thought it must have been a prank. "Please, Calvin." She started for the Greenwood house, knowing he would follow. He always did. She was at the doorstep far sooner than she was prepared. It was 7:30 in the morning and not a time for callers, certainly not for this type of call. Her chest rose and fell, the soft gray silk of her morning dress ruffling as the breeze picked up and brushed her body with a late spring chill. "Are you gonna knock, Lolly?" She licked her lips and swallowed, almost imagining constraints around her throat. Before she could stop him, Calvin's knuckles rapped on the door. What could she say when the door was answered? "Good morning, Mrs. Greenwood. I received a strange missive this dawn when I arrived at the paper. An obituary for your husband. I thought perhaps it was a hoax, but I'm afraid to tell you he is most definitely hanging from the rafters in your carriage house." That wouldn't do. Libby tried to reconstruct her verbiage. "Mrs. Greenwood, I'm so terribly sorry to tell you this, but your husband isn't well. He's dead!" Libby half shouted as the door opened, and the questioning raised brow of Elijah Greenwood, Deacon Greenwood's son, greeted her. "Libby Sheffield, what in the name of all that's holy—" Elijah stepped out and closed the door firmly behind him, as if to spare his family from her horrible communication skills and the utter impropriety of her early morning call. Elijah's questioning stare bounced between Libby and Calvin. He would be used to seeing them together, for Calvin was often her shadow. He would also be used to her inability to compose coherent thoughts when under duress, and even worse, any time he was present. It didn't serve her well now. This was not a moment to be consumed by the overwhelming emotions she combated any time Elijah was within 2 feet of her. Calvin shifted from foot to foot, tongue-tied as usual, in the presence of the enigmatically serious visage of Elijah Greenwood. Libby cast her friend a desperate look, but Calvin had taken to wringing his hands and humming under his breath. She lifted her eyes to meet Elijah's. His brows had risen in annoyance, and he tilted his head as he crossed his arms over his chest, his marvelously broad chest that Libby had oft imagined hiding herself against. "Libby, this isn't amusing. Why are you here at the break of dawn?"